very brightly colored and it's very loud, and it's fun for a while.
We want to be free to do what we want to do.
Were Muhammad Ali and Sonny Barker, the president of Hell's Angels.
This is 1095.
Before we talk about anything, congratulations is probably the first point on your OBE, which was maybe in the last 2-3 months, which came as a surprise.
It came as a very, very big surprise. Yes, I didn't believe it at all, and I still find it obviously a very great honor. And I don't know why I deserve it more than other people. But there you go.
Well, I think it's well deserved. I mean, you only have to go and Google your Wikipedia and look at the long career you've had, and it was for both music and for contribution in charity, right? Which you've done a lot of over the years with the Royal Variety, the Children's Royal Variety. But no, congratulations on that. So, and I always wondered with these, obviously you must have had to accept it virtually, did you? I assume there was no meeting, and usually this stuff would involve an event, but was it all done over some kind of virtual call?
I think the start of it is the formality of receiving it is the one thing that hasn't been ascertained yet as to when we do that, because everybody is locked out. So, you can't have any ceremonies at Buckingham Palace. So I don't know when that's going to happen, but they know where I am, and they have my email links and other links, so they'll find me.
Cool. Well, yeah, congratulations on that. Look, we've got about 40 minutes to go through a 65-year career, which is obviously not going to happen, but there's lots I want to ask you, over that period, I think. But one of the great starting points is I posted a picture yesterday, which I will probably use when I post this podcast, which is a great picture that your daughter posted some time ago, and I have on my phone, which is you with Sinatra. And this picture is on the internet. It's I don't know when it's from, what year it's from, and I don't even know if you know it, or maybe you do, but there's a photo of Sinatra looking at you. And I wondered what the story behind that is, whether you can remember or where that photo came from, because I'm fascinated by it. It's probably what I will use as a kind of post of the podcast. And I just wondered, any kind of stories behind that photo.
I think that's 1962, and it's at a recording studio in London, in Bayswater, which was known as CTS Studios. And Sinatra had decided he wanted to make an album in London, and he wanted us to produce it, and that is the company that I work for, which was Pi Records. And so he really sort of planned the whole album, chose the songs, chose the arranger and conductor, who was a great man, a Canadian guy living in the Channel Islands, and his name was Robert Farnan. And in music circles, he is obviously very, very well known. And Sinatra loved to record, and then he loved playing back what he'd just recorded with the orchestra to everybody in the studio. So we had to have the studio rigged to be able to do playback direct from the tapes as they were in those days. And that's what it is. I'm standing there talking to him, listening to the playback, and he's saying to me, "Is it all right? What do you think?" And I'm saying, "I think that we've got it. I think it's that title's done and dusted, fantastic." And so we're just having a general chat, and it was really funny because I was very nervous to start with. I was introduced to him by my boss, who said, "Now, Tony is going to run the session because Tony is the musician and he can read a score and he's got good ears." And on the very first take when we started, I thought Sinatra was really out of tune on something. And I thought, we're right at the beginning. We're only seconds into the take. And I thought, I can't let it go on because there'll be 3 or 4 minutes of recording. And in those days, we didn't do so much editing, and we didn't do so much retracking of the voice, and Sinatra didn't like that anyway. He liked it all to feel live, even though we were doing it to tape. He wanted to feel that the whole thing was live, and so that was my job, was to explain to him before this this actual playback. I said, how do you want me to approach you? He said, you're the boss. You tell me if I'm out of tune or you want to do it. And I thought to myself, here am I think I was about 20, 21, telling the great man, the legend, that he's singing out of tune. And so how to phrase that delicately was a challenge all the time. But he was great.
I can imagine so at 21, and yeah, I mean, that you 21 years old, you've been going a few years then, right? You kind of went straight in to the industry at 16. You went out and worked as
I came out of the school and decided to go and work at in the music business, rather than go to any more colleges anymore. I could have done, but, I certainly probably had the talent to go to the Royal Academy of Music, one of those wonderful academies. But in the end, I decided to just get stuck into working in the music business.
Can you remember when do you remember when you first kind of knew? I mean, a lot of people spend kind of years working out what they want to do, and many try different things. And can you remember that point when you were, had that determination of music was your path, the career you wanted to follow? Was it a defining moment? Was it something?
I think, yes, even when I was at school and my voice broke, and I was, I knew then that I wanted, because they offered me a job of assistant choir master at the school, and I was only 14, and it wasn't a paid job, but it was the great experience of teaching the younger new boys coming into the college, the choir school, coaching them, passing on what I'd learned, using my skills as a musician, and that was a fantastic. And I knew then, and I was about 14, I knew then that I wanted to go into the music business somehow, but I was never quite sure what openings were available. I'd heard of so many people starting in the post room. Everybody had a post room, or the trade department, because we used to use song copies in those days, and so there was always openings in offices, and that's how in July 1955. I started my pilgrimage, found Denmark Street, and went and just knocked on the doors of music publishers. Have you got a job for a 16-year-old? Well, most of them said no. Some said, well, come back later this year. But I walked into one office, Francis Den Hunter, music publishers, very famous. And I said, I want a job in the music business. And they said, well, we know that somebody needs a junior. They need somebody, a gopher. So they need somebody to run around, make the tea, get the mail, run the errands. So I took it on, and it was the best thing I ever did, because there was the boss wasn't always around, and his office had a piano in it, which everybody needed a piano. It had the record player. I don't think it had a tape machine. We were still only on wire recorders then. With the favorite. There was the Grundig tape machine. That's true. But the cassette machine hadn't even been invented. So you can imagine what kind of music business it was.
It's I had this as a question later, but as you brought it up now, let's talk about it, and I was chatting to you about this in Sydney. I don't know when that was, when we last caught up in Sydney. Maybe it was 8 years ago, and I was looking at making a documentary around the kind of progression of the industry, and you were talking about, I think, the first ever, how the first records were pressed, and I'm not going to get this right, but the material, it wasn't rock, but there was some material. You were talking about the first records that were pressed before vinyl. What what were they? You know, what was the? You would have been there.
It was vinyl.
It was
But
vinyl. Was the first
well,
record?
no. Before vinyl, there was a thing called shellac,
Right. Okay.
and that was brittle, and that's why those records could easily be broken, and you know, just like breaking a very large biscuit, they're just so brittle, and then they invented the vinyl, which is a steam. Both presses work the same way. You put a big lump of vinyl in, and you inject steam in as you pull the press down. And it was a laborious. It took ages. And of course, whereas pop records you could get away with a few glitches, with classical music, very very quiet passages. You had to make sure that they called it the mother, and that's a reverse negative of the record, which goes in the top part of the stamper. I'm getting a bit technical here, but that's what it was. And when I joined the company, we had we just had stereo had just been invented. That's 2 tracks. Left and right on a record, and even that was pretty hard to achieve in those days. But that was it. About 1955, 56, stereo.
Yeah, and that went on. I mean, I did a little bit of a stint in a studio when I was young, and I happened to work right.
Indeed.
Well, I happened to work right at that time when it went analog to digital. So I was doing the job of splicing tape off a 24 to an 8 before it went to, at that point, it became a DAT tape, because it was like, I think it was a digital shift. So that would have been in 91 or 90 or something around that time. But now that was a massive shift, I think, in terms of how you ran studios. But now I got no idea now. I mean, that just how plugged into are you into it now? Excuse the pun, but do you kind of stay away from the whole technical side of it? I mean, everything's digital, or is it just, have you had to get involved because of all the material you have out there and how it's relicensed and how it goes onto different platforms?
I'm talking to you through the computer that I use to make records now. And a load, it's all software, so all the musical instruments that I need, I have access to through various companies that produce that software, and the big tower that I used to have, Macintosh, now is down into just, I'm talking to you straight to the screen, and that is where I make the music. And in fact, I started out about 3-4 years ago using 2 screens, one to put the actual recording on and one to keep as a dialogue box. And in the end, I decided I didn't even need those, because you can select different parts of the screen. And I've got a big, a 25-inch screen here. So I'd love to show it to you, but I'm using it.
Are you still composing? You're still writing now?
Yes.
Are you? It's still,
yes.
You will. It sounds to me like you will just keep going with it. So
yeah, no, and I'm well behind. I thought that with this the lockdown that I would have got a lot more music written, but I'm so enjoying being locked out, that I'm just a bit behind. I have several projects I need to get working on, which I will do in the new year.
it's funny actually you say that, because I this podcast is speaking to people in the creative space, and I always thought, it's been locked down, people would have done more, but it isn't the way it works, because when you're forced into a lockdown, it doesn't necessarily motivate creativity. When you decide to lock down because you want to get something done, it's a personal choice. It's a little bit different, I think, in terms of the motivation.
And I've always, throughout my entire career, I've always worked to deadlines. If somebody doesn't give me a deadline, I don't do it. They say we need this project finished, delivered next Monday, and everything I've ever done has usually been finished on the same day that I first heard about it, first got the commission, or somebody just said, would you like to try something? And I normally can come back very, very quickly to them. And that is the whole story of the Neighbours theme music. That I spoke to the producer at 11 o'clock in the morning, and by about midday, I had the tune. I knew what the first line was, and so I can honestly say that Neighbours, everybody needs good neighbours. Just that line alone is copyright. Nobody dare use it. They do try, especially in Australia, because they try and get away with anything. And we've had to fight little battles with people who print T-shirts and do greetings cards and using bits of my lyric. We say, no, you can do, but you'll have to pay some money.
Obviously I was going to ask about the Neighbours stuff. I always thought it came out of a catalogue of music, but were you commissioned to write that specifically? Yes. Were you, because of your background because that was obviously a long time after the other theme tunes of Emmerdale and Crossroads? Am I right?
Yes, it was mid-80s, and I was living in Australia at the time, and I knew a man called Reg Watson. Reg was Australian. He worked for Grundy Television, very, very famous company. And Grundy created lots of soaps. And so I called him because I did the soap in England called Crossroads, and Reg produced that. And I got to Australia, so I got him on the phone. I said, Reg, I'm here if you've got any commissions, any ideas. And so I did one called Waterloo Station, which was not about trains. It was about police station in Sydney, and another one set in a hospital called Richmond Hill. And then these were pulled off very, very quickly. They didn't work. And then he called me again and he said, I've got one. This one is a bit different. He said, this is not just a theme. We need a song. We need a lyric. And he said, it's called Neighbours. And he gave me the brief outline. And I can remember as he was talking to me, I was going, oh, that's nice. Neighbours, everybody. And he said, what do you say? I said, I've just doodling. So the ideas were starting, even though he hadn't finished telling me what it was all about.
Awesome. So the brief of doing a theme tune, I mean, compared to say doing a pop song, of which you did many over the years, I mean, is it a different creative process, or you just take the brief and start writing based on gut feel?
With a TV theme, you are really writing to order. It has to be right for the purpose. And TV themes for soaps are very difficult because you never know what the first scene is going to be after the opening titles. It could be very, very dramatic. It could be a little bit of comedy. So really, the theme has to be quite neutral, and the best of them work like that. It's not a big drama like Mission Impossible, so you have to remember that. And Australia did produce a lot of soaps. I mean, there was Sons and Daughters. That was probably their biggest one. And I did really, as soon as I got to Australia, I thought, well, I've got to get involved in this because they do make and they do try out a lot of soaps, and they're still doing that. I mean, don't forget, there's Home and Away is another Australian soap, very, 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 very successful, still being made, still running.
They're probably still running, so yeah.
I still don't understand it, but the Neighbours is still in production, and I keep hearing rumours, well, they're going to take it off, but it never actually ends. The production is still going on in Sydney right now.
I've not watched it in about 20 years, I think, but I do understand. I mean, you look at the UK ones. I mean, they've run for EastEnders, and Coronation Street's probably the oldest, but I mean, they've run for so long. I don't know if Crossroads still runs. I haven't seen it. But
Coronation Street has just celebrated its 60th birthday.
Wow.
60 years of pioneering television. Amazing.
It is amazing when you think of
And
the way.
there's one guy who was in it from the beginning and is still in it. So he's done 60 years with no other jobs.
Yeah, I think that would be one of the longest acting jobs there is out there. That's for sure.
Yes.
So.
Well, I mean, also you can't really do anything else whilst you're appearing 2 or 3 times a week in a soap. So, but he's had a wonderful career and he's a very happy guy.
Yeah, for sure. It's a full-time job. I can't talk to you without asking about Petula Clark. And obviously, do you see that as the, downtown, would you see that as the kind of pinnacle and the thing you're best known for throughout, all the stuff you've done? And
as a songwriter, yes, because downtown is iconic. I will never write a better song than Downtown. And she was the one that encouraged it. I really was unprepared when I went to see her in Paris. She lived in Paris and I lived and worked in London, but she used to come over and record with me in London, and I used to set up the sessions. And then I used to go over to Paris, and that was lovely. A couple of days over there and work with her, to rehearse her. And on this particular occasion, it was 1964, around October, and I arrived at her house with an armful of songs that I'd picked up in America. They had great songs from lots of good songwriters, but she didn't like anything very much, and I was getting really worried. And then she said to me, "Aren't you working on anything yourself?" Well, I had started doodling around with something I was going to call Downtown. It had a tune, it had no lyrics, but I knew where the word downtown was going to go. So I said, well, I'm just experimenting with something at the moment. I was very embarrassed because I hate playing half-baked ideas, and this one hadn't even started, wasn't even in the oven. And so I played it to her, and she said, "That's very interesting. That's a lovely tune and lovely construction, and I think you should work on that one." And so I did. And I remember going to back to London and going to see the record company, because every time I made a record, I had to put a budget in. I mean, that makes sense, doesn't it? Mm. And I decided I was going to use a big orchestra with this Downtown, that it needed this big scene. And of course, I put the budget in, and they said, "Well, what's the song like?" I said, "I don't know. I haven't finished it yet." And there was a little bit of concern, of course. And even when I finished the record, you had to, in those days, you had to take it into a meeting. And everybody else who was producing records at the company at that time, it was a Tuesday meeting, and everybody played their latest production. So the other record producers and the press office and the promotions could also criticize it and say, yeah, that's great. Anyway, they listened to Downtown by Petula Clark, and nobody sort of said, so anyway, they just put it on one side. Well, let's see then what Petula wants to do with it. Not, this is great, get her on the phone, we're going to release it immediately. And the lucky break came because Pi had just made a deal with Warner Brothers Records, and the head A&R, artist and repertoire manager from Warner, was over in London, and my managing director called me to his office to meet this Joe Smith, and he said to me, "Tony," and he didn't even know the title. I mean, you can't have a better title than Downtown, one word. But he said, "That Petula Clark thing, can you bring it in? That Petula Clark thing, can you bring it into my office, play it, and see what Joe thinks?" Well, Joe heard it and said, "That is a smash." I said, "What, exactly as it is?" Because Petula is very British on the record. It's, it really is "when you're alone and life is making you lonely." And I always thought we needed much more of an American approach. But it's amazing. You put your faith in people, and Joe said, no, leave it. It's fabulous. It's just exactly what we want. And they released the record. And the next thing is they're rushing around in London at Pi Records saying, okay, we've got to get the record out here in England now. And anybody know where Petula is and what she's doing over the next couple of, suddenly there was because we could see it was going right up the charts in America. So that's the story of Downtown. And it was Petula who said, this could be something great. I was still finishing it as we started recording it. There were a couple of lines in the second verse that I wasn't happy with. But we got away with it. And she's great. Petula's been fantastic right the way through everything. And anytime that she would call me and say, I need another song. And they're quite cheeky about it because, she went off and recorded Charlie Chaplin's This Is My Song without me. And so, I could have got huffy about that. But she called me and she said, okay, right, I've done that one. What have you got? And I think we came up with My Love at that time, another number one. It was just a great time.
You did, of course, she is recognized for that song, and you were on the composition side, and you have done a lot of work in that capacity, the Searchers, Sugar and Spice, but you've also done a lot of your own stuff as well. Was that a kind of conscious decision that you were going to kind of put your own stuff out, but also, just do a huge amount of work and work with other artists and be the composer, or did it just kind of come about?
It was the record company. For a start, I needed to develop some artists there was a habit in the mid-50s, and all record companies were guilty of just covering American hits. So there's always be, as you know, Sandy Shaw covered Dionne Warwick, Cilla Black covered Dionne Warwick, and it's okay, but it doesn't. There's no home market then. All you're doing is getting a hit record, but you're not creating an artist. You're not creating a new market for yourself worldwide. And so a few of us got together in Pi Records. And we said, right, we're going to work to get our own artists. And it was proven with like Decca, how they pioneered David Bowie. And that becomes a product that is very, very British. And you can't really copy David Bowie, can you? It's just, and that was the way to go. So I went up to Liverpool, and one Friday evening, I went to a ballroom there, and there were these guys, the Searchers, doing Sugar. No, not Sugar. I wrote that one. And they were doing Sweets for My Sweet, Sugar for My Honey. And I said, oh, that's a hit. Let's sign that up. Again, the same sort of problem was they didn't write the song. I really needed what George Martin had found, and that was the Beatles. The Beatles have never needed to go to anybody else for a song. They've always, Lennon and McCartney were writing everything themselves. And even George Harrison got in on the act of writing wonderful songs. And so that was the motivation. We needed to create British hits. And so the Searchers, we had a very good run with the Searchers, but it's always difficult finding songs for them because they didn't write anything. And I wrote one song for them, Sugar and Spice, and that was a worldwide hit. And I'm pretty happy about that too.
Yeah, that's a hit. I mean, that's a song that I think maybe it's just my circles, but that song, if I mention to anyone, I mean, everyone knows that song. Downtown as well, though. I mean, even here in Thailand, I mentioned that song to my girlfriend, and amazingly, she knows the song Downtown. So it's amazing the kind of longevity of those songs and how far they have reached over the years, really. as tunes. You must be very proud to be able to look back on those as songs that you composed.
Well, the other thing that's great is that even now, a song like "You're the One," which is a reverse of what normally happens, Petula wrote the tune, recorded it in French, and then she said, "I'd like to do this in English." So I wrote the English lyric for her French tune, and now it's in an episode of the Crown is a new Netflix series, and it's one of the big songs that's used in the in episode 4, I think it is. It's so the catalogue is being used all the time because it evokes the periods.
Yeah, right. I just before I forget, you mentioned Bowie then for a minute. You did some stuff with Bowie. You worked with Bowie at one point?
Yes, when I was at Pi, at the same time, in the same year, 63, that I took on the Searchers, I also auditioned and signed up David Bowie. But the sort of magic that is created by a very wonderful artist like Bowie, he just wasn't ready. And the 6 tracks that I made with him are very interesting, but they're not hits. And of course, I had to let him go because my company said, you spent a lot of money on this artist and we don't have the hits to show for it. We recommend that you let him go and you work on something else. And so I had to let him go, but I always knew that one day, and it was only 2 or 3 years later, along comes David Bowie, because when I recorded, he was Davy Jones, but we couldn't call it. He had to change his name from Davy Jones because there was already a Davy Jones in the Monkees, and so David Bowie came along, Space Oddity, and I thought, there's the hit that I was waiting for. Because I only signed up David Bowie because he was so creative. I wasn't going to look for songs for David Bowie. And if you look, all the singles that I recorded with David Bowie were all written by him, A-side and B-side. And that was the whole idea, to try and break a new artist in England.
Cool, that's a good story. And as you were talking, you reminded me of something actually, which was New Faces. Many people who listen to the podcast had no idea what New Faces was, but you were on New Faces, which I describe it as like the kind of the idol of that era. The kind of now you've got the kind of the American Idol, the British Idol. New Faces was that kind of X Factory type show. And were you not known as the kind of mean judge on there? Were you not the Simon Cowell of that, or is that a bit harsh?
No, that's exactly right. And in fact, they took my own name and called me the Hatchet Man, because I would deliver a hatchet job on so many of the artists. And one of the problems with the program is that it had no voting system. Really, you a postcard you'd have to send in by a certain date, and that would then determine who was going to go on into the next heats. But it was really hard, and because also the point system, there was judges like Arthur Askey, who really didn't want to be unkind to anybody, so gave everybody 8 out of 10 in 3 categories. And I said, my friend on there was Mickey Most, great record producer, discovered the Animals. We got on great, and we said to each other, if we're going to make sure that the people that we think should win, we're going to have to mark other people very, very low. We're going to have to mark the rubbish right down. And that's what I was doing, 3s and 4s, and really giving good people. I mean, there was some really good. Victoria Wood was one of our discoveries. Well, you couldn't lose her in the mess. you had to make sure that she got good enough points to go on and take part in more programs. So we did sort of make sure that it worked.
Yeah, cool. Look, we're coming towards the end, and I will not forgive myself if I don't at least ask about my mother's 15 minutes of fame that she got just a few years ago, with which I tuned into radio interviews, and the push a little button song that she performed it on one of your albums, then it got picked out by the BBC, I think, for the television ad campaign or television license campaign. Was that how it came about? She must have been very young when she did that. You're 10 or so years older, right?
It's a funny story, really, because I had recorded my wife, Jackie Trent, at that time, her sister, Mally. I recorded her, and we didn't get any hits, but we sort of got some good playable records. And my mother said to me, "Why don't you record your sister then?" So Ninette didn't have a reputation for having a sort of loud, belty voice. It was really just a light, if folk orientated sound, really. And anyway, I decided that yes, we would for a gimmick. And so I wrote "Push a Little Button," which is quite it's a nice little idea. And we recorded it, and the record company put it out. Now then, much later, goodness knows how anybody found out about it, because I mean the record was well and truly buried, and we'd forgotten all about it. And then suddenly I got this message a few years back to say that the promotion for the TV license was going to be centered on "Push a Little Button." And we thought that was fantastic. And I had to help do the negotiation, because nobody could find a copy of the record. But I think your mother had one. She must have had a copy.
Well, it was great. It was a nice surprise out of nowhere, that was for sure. It was good for the family, and it was very enjoyable to hear it and see the quirky. I don't know whether the video was made for the song, but there's a lovely little video that goes with it that's on YouTube. So
I think the video was made for the original record. It was fun. It was good fun.
Look, it's been lovely to chat. And where can people find out more about you? I will share your website and stuff. I mean, people can Google your name, but is there like is there a Tony Hatch website? I'm not actually sure. If people want to go and
TonyHatch.co.uk, not .com,
cool.
.co.uk, and it's an information service, really. It has a complete list of all my songs, and a little bit of gossip of what I'm doing now, and I never keep it up to date properly. But now we're talking, I will.
Cool. Well, I will share it in the notes. It's been lovely to chat this close to Christmas, and love to the family. I hope we get to cross paths again soon, because every time we do, it's always. I think last time I saw you in Sydney, you said, "Hey, come round. There's a couple of people coming over," and I got there, and there was 100 people and three times as many bottles of wine and champagne, and you on the piano. So it's always fun. I've always enjoyed those times. Yeah. So hopefully another time in the not too distant future.
I think it's more likely we'll do it in Australia.
Sounds like a plan.
Okay. Take care.
All right, Tony. Well, have a lovely Christmas and New Year. All the best.
Bye, my nephew.
When you're alone and life is making you lonely, you can always
This is 109.5.